Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everybody. We are very excited to have Robert Steven Goldstein on the show. His new book, Golda's Hutch, is out now, came out yesterday, March 11th, 2025. And I love it. I've started reading it and I just got hooked immediately, hook, line, and sinker, because he knows characters. And I don't know, he got me into the world of, Craig and Craig Schumacher and Byron Dorn. That's the beginning of the book for me. And I don't want to tell you too much, but basically, this is an interesting story between two people working in the same, corporate America thing, two different ways of life, completely opposite. And there's a secret going around, and there's psychology, as there always is in corporate worlds, right? And but anyway, this is his fifth novel, right? So welcome, Robert. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
This is exciting because I love how your characters are so opposite, but and come from different approaches, like different ways of life, and tell everybody a little bit about the book so that, an overview, so I don't give it away. Because I'm at the beginning, but I could give it away right now. You know what I mean?
Golda's Hutch is a dark psychological novel about secrets and deceit. Uh, it takes place in San Francisco. As you said, much of it is based in a corporate setting, but a lot of it is based outside the corporate setting. It involves seven people primarily, three couples and a single woman. And there's also a rabbit named Golda.
Mm.
And as you get to know these characters, you'll soon come to see that Golda is actually the only character who's not hiding potentially dangerous secrets.
Oh, well, don't you think everyone has some secret at some point? I mean, we all have. I mean, why should we share everything, right? But
We all have inner lives and outer lives. And when I say this is a psychological novel, what I mean is that the inner lives, the thoughts that people have, are equally as important as what they say and do.
mm,
And you're right. We keep those much of what we think about, we keep to ourselves. The difference here, I think, is that a number of the secrets that people have are potentially damaging,
mm,
especially this novel is set right around Y2K. If you remember, that
yeah,
was about a quarter of a century ago now, which is,
yeah.
I believe. Uh,
Wow.
but there was a lot of corporate activity around Y2K, and uh, attitudes were a little bit more conservative and uptight, even in San Francisco, where this novel is
Mhm,
set. And so some of these secrets are potentially damaging to people's careers and friendships.
mhm.
Uh, and as you hinted, Byron Dorn and Craig Schumacher, um, Byron Dorn discovers a quite by chance discovers a secret about Craig, who's his boss, and
Mm.
wonders about wonders about whether it can benefit him.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing, that emotional blackmail, trickery, psychology, like here we could use this on you, because I think, I kind of go into the world of what our famous people go through. Imagine life as a super famous person that you can't get away with anything. You can't leave your doorstep without paparazzi photographing you and showcasing it to the world. You do not, you have a private life, but how private is it really? And everybody wants to use whatever you do. But this is really what happens in real life anyway. If somebody knows something about you and they want to gain an upper hand on you, they could, you could win by being like a nice person, or You could win by going, I'm going to dangle this as a like emotional blackmail. I don't say
It-
if it's emotional, but it's in a way blackmail, right?
oh, absolutely. Uh, and it's unfortunate, I guess, that people who are ostensibly friends can succumb to the lure of, oh, this secret, can this help me personally, even though it's at the expense of someone I consider my friend? Uh,
Mm.
the the person who wrote the back cover copy for the novel was actually the same person who did a wonderful copy edit for me, and she said, Craig isn't the only one with a secret. As the stakes rise, everyone will have to decide
Mm-hmm.
what they're willing to sacrifice to get what they want and when they're willing to walk away. And
Wow,
I thought that,
that's
some
perfect.
it takes a person outside of the author, because as an author, you get so engrossed in the minutia of what you're writing. Someone outside, like a copy editor, to just look at the whole thing as a gestalt and say, yeah, this is what it's about. It's
Mm.
about the secrets and when you're willing to walk away, or if you're willing to walk away.
So it's like everyone's playing poker.
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Yeah. Because in a way, I mean, that is life. And it's like, oh, you know someone's secret and someone will entrust you with that, or you find it like, how Byron did, you know,
And
are
Lisa,
you,
that's a
yeah,
really good analogy. I hadn't really thought about it, but the other aspect of poker is that the person with the best hand doesn't necessarily win. It's the person who makes the best of the hand they have
yeah,
that you're dealt. And all of the characters here are flawed in some way, dysfunctional. So, and in a way that reflects all of us, right? So,
mm,
um, we all are trying to play the hand we're dealt.
yeah. And it's like, are you going to do it from the better good, and do you want to, so it's, do you want to do that to another person too? And it's like, well, yeah, when you want to walk away, sometimes you fold, and you play poker, you just fold because you don't know really what the other person holds, but you think you know. So it's this whole game that we play as humans, but animals do it too. Animals play this game. If you watch squirrels, they hide their acorns, from other animals, but they will make a ruckus. Like here, I'm putting all my stash here and make a noise so that other animals that or other squirrels even will think, oh, that's their stash. Meantime, they're quietly hiding their stash of acorns in another part of an oak tree or under, they even hide them in the snow, and know how to go and find them, but they hide them and sometimes they forget where they hid them. They
Mhm.
forget their own devious plan, to do that. So us humans do that too.
We certainly do. And I read an interesting article some time back about squirrels and crows. Crows are incredibly intelligent
Oh
animals up
yeah.
there with chimpanzees and dolphins. So crows also stash edibles and little things, and because they can fly, they stash it over an enormous area sometimes. And what the article said is that, as you said, squirrels sometimes, even frequently, forget where they've buried nuts, but they know the general area, and other squirrels have buried nuts there as well, so they're likely to find something when they dig. Whereas crows can can remember like 100 different items that they've secreted around around town. I live in San Francisco. We have a very healthy community of crows, and they're fascinating
I
to
love them.
watch.
I love them. Well, do you think that, I mean, you've got a bunny in this. So
A
let's
rabbit.
bring in yeah. So I mean, when you bring in a rabbit, you bring in animals like, humans are animals. We've got to kind of look at that a little bit and remember that we have those, we may have civilized ourselves, but where does civilization start and end? you know, and that's where the gray area becomes really good books like yours, you know.
Oh, thank you. I think I've had a main character who's an animal in pretty much every novel I've written. Uh, you sound to me like an animal lover, Lisa.
Hmm.
You
Oh,
know,
big
those
time.
of us we have hosted in our home cats, dogs, parrots, rabbits, turtles. Um, there, one thing that you learn if you live with animals is that they're incredibly intelligent. Every one of them has a distinct and unique personality, and
Hmm.
they're capable of cleverness, cunning, and a great deal of love and affection. And in this novel, Golda is a very intelligent rabbit, and uh, she's very close with Craig Schumacher, who practices yoga and
Hmm.
meditation every morning, and Golda practices along with him.
It's like goat yoga. I want to do goat yoga. I mean, come on, that's goats are awesome. They, they're so
Oh,
they're funny. We travel full time documenting parks and public lands, and as we do it, we pet sit. Not for money. It's a transfer of, hey, you can sit and work in my home, take care of my home and my animals, and we love it because we love being around animals. That's our thing. And we recently took care of a goat, and I swear the goat just wanted to sit and be a baby in my arms. There was a little baby, and he's like, I want to come and sit in your arms. And he literally jump up on me. And I'm like, oh, this is so amazing. And then I was thinking about everyone doing goat yoga, but animals do yoga. So do you think we learned yoga from animals? Like I do, because look at how cats stretch,
yeah.
dogs stretch. They
Oh,
don't call it downward dog for nothing.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I've practiced yoga for well over 50 years now, and many of the postures are named after animals.
Mm. So why do you bring animals into your stories? Is that something surprising for a reader? For me, I'm always into animals being in anything.
I guess as authors, we write about what we know. We write about the kind of
Hmm.
life that we know about, and I really can't picture a life without animals in the house.
Hmm.
They're really part and parcel of the sensibility of the home, the feelings, and the just the camaraderie.
I think
So
it brings balance to the
I
human character.
very well put. Yes, I agree.
It gives that space too for a reader to, when you have scenes with animals and the connection with the humans, it gives that other intel. And that's what I think is so great, is how you do your characters. You're not telling people this character is like this. It's their actions telling you who they are, as a character.
I try
And
very hard to show, not tell. Yes.
yeah, and I think when you bring the animal in, that's another component. Like the work setting, you identify these two opposite ends of these characters and other ones in there. You brought in the Meyer-Briggs test, personality test. I got the giggles when that was the very beginning of the book, everyone. And you have to read it, but I got the giggles with that because there's a whole thing on that. But um, it's like you want to play with those tests all the time. It's like, no, today I'm going to be this. I'm going to be this person. There's that. I'm that person who wants to mess with the test.
And you know what else is true about animals, I think, is that especially if you're someone who meditates, practices yoga, your own path to spirituality is periodically emptying your mind of thoughts and just kind of
Mhm.
making it an empty vessel so that the spiritual or mystical energy can kind of fill it up. And animals, I think animals and also plants, if you're out in a
Oh
forest,
yeah,
doing walking meditation on a hike,
yeah.
uh, because they're not unlike we humans, who for better or worse are constantly bombarding ourselves with thoughts, focused or unfocused, uh, animals and plants especially are free of that. So I think they have uh, a direct link to the spiritual energy around us that we as humans are trying to tap into when we
Mhm.
engage in practices like meditation or prayer or yoga or that sort of thing.
There's so much more to learn of animals. And they're sentient beings. I truly believe that. And I don't believe in this like one is, knows more than the other or smarter than the other because we're every day scientists are finding out more and more and more and more. It's just we haven't grasped everything yet. We don't know everything yet. In science, it's always changing, which is the hardest thing for scientists is to get the general populace to understand that science, what we know today, is going to change tomorrow, but we know something more than we knew yesterday. So we have another footstep. So we learned a little bit more. So now we have more treatments that help. We have more things to, we've learned something new so we can do more applications to, like climate change and things like that. Um, so we get to learn more. And with animals, it really is actually just calming down and being in a space where you can because you can communicate with them. When people say you can't, there's this energy and they're not judgmental other than knowing danger. You know what I mean? They kind of
Mhm.
accept you who you are, and in the natural order of life in animal societies, animals go, okay, you're a danger, you're prey, you're this, and that's kind of a survival place, but it also doesn't mean that they don't have trust and knowing where they can, like a cat will let you know, okay, I can trust you, I can roll on my back and you can pet my belly, maybe some not. But you know what I mean? There's I don't know, it's very interesting because they know stuff. They know stuff, but
They, they
without the weird judgmental stuff that us humans do.
they absolutely do, and I tried hard in this novel to display that about Golda, and it was somewhat challenging because
Mhm.
my prior novels I featured dogs in a couple. A parrot was prominently featured in one. And those kind of animals are much more outgoing,
Yeah,
much more
vocal.
demonstrative.
Hmm.
Rabbits are much more subtle.
Hmm.
As you said, no value judgment. They're equally as intelligent and sensitive to what's going on. They're just more guarded about it, perhaps because they're a prey animal.
Hmm.
But so getting into Golda took a good deal of, as you said, just kind of letting go and settling in and getting comfortable with her. And fortunately, as I think I mentioned this prior to the interview starting when we were just chatting, but my characters, uh, I start with characters and they kind of write the book. So I was very
Hmm.
fortunate that Craig Schumacher, being someone who spends a good a good chunk of time early every morning uh, practicing yoga and meditation with Golda, he was able to let go and show a bit more about Golda, probably more than I would have been able to just as an author trying to write about it. He was there with uh, with Golda. Excuse
What's
me
in
if I talk about my characters as if they're real people,
I mean they do become family, don't you? You kind of live with them,
absolutely.
you know. Well, with what's interesting about the two, if you just go on the Byron and Craig, so Byron is boisterous and you know, drinks coffee down to, to his giblets, giblets. Obviously, I don't drink them, but giblets, his vodka. But he's got that very extreme personality. But in the same way, they're kind of a line in extreme because it's still a way of controlling your life. You've got these polar opposites, but they
Polar
are
opposite.
both in a way. doing the same thing, one from a healthy and spiritual perspective, the other one with spirits and coffee and extroverted, loud. One's loud, one's quiet, but they're both doing things to control what their emotions are in a way. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And while they are in opposition, they're also in cooperation because Craig is a vice president. Uh, Byron is an executive director reporting directly to
Mm-hmm.
him. And they are responsible to get things done,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the situation where they are with Y2K looming and the need to install new systems. As any of us who went through Y2K knew
Mm-hmm.
what, what a
That
kind of
was freaky.
it was. Yes, it was a very intense, freaky kind of circus that that turned out fine. But for those of us who went through it, it was stressful. And whenever there's stress, I think that that exacerbates these kind of personality differences, don't you think?
Mm, stress is good. You know, the stress brings the arts to the best point, you know, um, because it's how you handle things, right? It's about like that going back to that hand of cards, what were you dealt? How did you handle it when things got rough? Did you fold? Did you just completely, you know, bet on the bet it all out there, like put full risk? Are you calculating? How are you handling it? And one doing yoga, the other one going, I'm going to go have a cocktail.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Byron,
would like to do both. Can't we do yoga and then a cocktail?
uh, you're kind of defining many days that I have. Yes, you go yoga and meditation to a cocktail in the evening, or at least
Perfect.
a glass of wine with dinner.
Yeah, I'll do that instead of no giblets. I'm not eating giblets. But let's go into your background of writing because I know you also did some of the corporate world. My gosh, that I think there's more games in there than things getting done sometimes. I feel that with politicians. It's like, how many meetings do we have to actually get somewhere and get something done? So that because there's so much politicking in any kind of workplace situation, no matter what, because human beings do that. So is that what kind of that did any of that in your careers drive you to write, or have you always wanted to write and focus on people?
It's a very good question. Uh, I always wanted to write, and I always saw myself as a writer. I published my first poem in the school newspaper when I was in second grade. Uh, I when I was a senior in high school, a short story I wrote won first prize in the Scholastic National Short Story Contest, and I majored in English literature and creative writing in college. But Lisa, it became clear to me that the kind of literary fiction that I wanted to write was not going to support me financially. And many writers come to this. Many take the academic track at that point. I did not. I remember reading an article when I was sort of at an inflection point about what to do in my life. I was I just graduated college, and it uh, it was interesting. So this was back in the 1970s. It may be somewhat different now, but the article asked, how many people in the United States make a living, a full-time living writing fiction and nothing else? And they had a list of 75 people out of hundreds of millions of people. 75 people. And if you read down the list, if you're a reader, you recognize most of those names and you knew the kind of books that they wrote. And you knew if you didn't write books like that, you weren't going to be able to make a living. So I decided to take the corporate path. I started as a mail boy, as they used to call it. I was making
Yeah.
$500 a month. A month. This was in 1974. Uh, and over a 35-year career, I did eventually become a vice president, and I dealt with the politics and such. Uh, I'll say two things about that. The first one is, as a kid, I was an amateur magician, and I idolized the famous magician and escapologist Harry Houdini.
Oh yeah. Who died
Houdini,
on Halloween?
yes, he did. And Houdini had a saying, which was, "A magician is an actor playing the role of a magician." And when as I climbed the corporate ladder and faced more and more backstabbing and lack of ethics and dishonesty. Uh, I would come into work every day in my suit and tie and step into my office, and the first thing I'd say to myself is, I am an actor playing the role of a vice president.
Oh.
I'd kind of carry that with me through, and I was very
Mhm.
successful at what I did, but I always knew that as soon as it was financially feasible, I would stop and start writing. And I managed to do it at age 56. I worked
Oh wow. Good for you.
my last day as a full-time vice president, and I've been writing ever since. I'm
Mm,
73 now. And what's interesting, Lisa, to me, is that this is my fifth novel, as you mentioned, but it's the first novel that I've written that deals with the corporate
mm,
hierarchy and with corporations. So it took me about 17 years of being away from it to feel sufficient distance from it
mm.
to write about it objectively and in a way that I
Yeah.
is interesting, but not making it into a bellicose kind of political statement about corporate treachery.
Right. Yeah, you've got a perfect balance on that because I think when you read it, whether or not you've been in a corporate setting in your career, you've done it somewhere. I don't care, if you're working at McDonald's, the same game happens,
Yes.
you know, it is the same game. We all have to deal with this, even in high school. It's no different than high school. Come on.
The stakes are a little higher, but
Yes.
yes, and we're all a little more well practiced at it. But you're exactly right. It's the
Yeah.
same
You
thing.
know, you know, um, when we lived in South Africa, my mom would throw really good parties, and I had friends with musicians, and we've got an artsy life basically. And um, one party she did these theme parties, and everybody had to dress up from everything got decorated accordingly. And this one was come as you were as a kid, one was come as you were as you as you were in your previous life. That was a whole other thing. But this one was come as when you were a kid, so like a children's party. So people came dressed up as what they were like as kids, and everybody had to bring a toy. Okay. So, it was a fun party, and everybody's laughing at each other, we didn't have Halloween over there back then. So, we did our own thing. I swear. So a few cocktails in, obviously, right? By the end of the evening, people were out in the yard on the grass with their toys and fighting over toys, stealing them. The whole thing, it was like the kids in the sandbox. Because everybody eventually forgot, we're all adults, but suddenly the behavior went right to when we were kids. And I was a kid, and we were looking at the adults, us kids, going, what a bunch of schmucks. What is this? Because if you went near a toy, it's like you're going to get swatted, like, it's mine, it's mine. So it was really funny to watch, because we weren't drinking, they were. you know?
Right. It's interesting you mentioned this because at the end of Golda's Hutch, at the very end, a toy from Craig's childhood that he saved all these years actually comes into play.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Toys toys have sentiment, like the value of a toy. You can't even put a dollar on it.
That,
I rem-
that's
it
right.
There's something there's an I remember when we used to have a band when we lived in San Diego, and we rehearsed at this baker's house, and he was a guitarist. And he wouldn't let any of the guys into the house to go use the restroom, whatever. We rehearsed in this studio area, but he let us go in as ladies, but he had this entire toy collection from like the 40s and the 50s, all hand done. And he was like, no one's allowed to touch them. And that's when no male was allowed, no guys were allowed into his house because of his toys. He
Hmm.
was protective over his toys. And I've always wondered about this. It's bugged me for years. It was all about his toys. No male was allowed in there because they would want to play with the toys. So what's with that? Boys and toys.
Boys and toys.
Yeah. I mean, I, yeah, girls I suppose do it. I don't know, but the I think it's our first possessions, maybe as kids, and then we start using them as bargaining tools at that point.
And we also project aspects of ourselves and aspects of real people onto the toys sometimes.
Hmm.
I, I I don't want to give away too much about the book, but I'll just mention that this Craig is a corporate vice president, which makes it all the more strange that he practices yoga and meditation, but he's also a strict vegetarian, and he has
Hmm.
been for many, many years. But this toy is an old chimp, an old stuffed chimp or monkey that he had as a very young boy. And this is long before he became a vegetarian or even thought about why eating animals was something that became more and more repugnant to him just
Hmm.
spiritually. Uh, so he had this monkey and he was very close with it and played with it all the time. And then when he was 12, his parents said, you're too old for this toy now. We're going to throw it away. And they threw it in the garbage, which was a bag that sat in the kitchen. And Craig could not fall asleep as a 12-year-old kid that night. And he snuck out into the kitchen. He retrieved the monkey from the garbage and took it with him into bed and never let his parents touch it again. And he still had it now as an adult.
Hmm.
And he he kind of attributed how he felt about this monkey, this stuffed monkey. It wasn't long after that when he was eating meat, he uh he began to associate it with the animal that it had been, and he kind of attributed his own becoming a vegetarian
Hmm.
in great part to this experience with this toy.
Hmm. Wow. It's kind of like when Paul McCartney saw, him and his wife Linda at the time, Linda McCartney, saw the sheep running in the field and they went, "Oh my gosh, we're eating them." And these sheep are happy and running around.
Mhm.
And yeah, vegetarianism, it's huge. I mean, there's so many arguments on it, but it's it, it's part of we don't have to do it. But anyway, we don't have to eat all of them. You know what I mean? It's kind of there's an interesting thing on that balance between again Craig and the Byron guy because the Byron's like I'll eat anything, steak, whatever,
Yes. But
whereas the other
Byron
one's like
is
I'm
extraordinarily,
not,
yes,
you know.
extraordinarily carnivorous and omnivorous, as are most people. Look, I've been a vegetarian personally for
Mhm.
as I said, well over 50 years, but nobody, pretty much nobody else in my life is. My wife isn't, my daughter isn't, none of my friends are, and I live with all these people. I don't try to proselytize
No.
or turn anybody into a vegetarian.
Mm-mm.
It's my path,
It's your
and
personal choice. Yeah.
it's my personal choice. It's very important to me. I think it's a huge component of my personal spiritual discipline, but not something that seems to work for most people, and I
Mm.
respect
Yeah. No, you know what? Almost vegetarian, was vegan for a while, but I actually physically cannot do some of it, especially on the road. unless that's what you do, because I'm allergic to so many different things. So it's kind of hard. I'm allergic to tree nuts. Otherwise, I'd be a vegan again.
Oh,
So it's very
that,
difficult.
that's
Yeah,
a, yeah.
that's a big deal. So anyway, that kind of ruined things. But there's I remember going vegan was actually just, I'm just not a big meat eater because it's the same, I just no. But it's a interesting balance even when people become that, because there's the vegetarians who start telling everybody morally that they're morally unjust if they don't become that way. And that's an interesting thing that happens psychologically with people of anything, whether it's religion, whether, you know what I mean? It's like, I believe this, so you need to believe my way. And it's
Yes. And as
that's
I
an
say,
interest. Yeah.
I, I don't do that. And I think
No.
what you hit upon about people thinking that their path is the only path,
Right.
it is probably the most dangerous thing, the most dangerous kind of psychological currency that humans deal with, because once you start thinking that your path is right and everybody else's path is wrong, it's a
Oof.
very, very slippery slope to
Yeah.
hatred, discrimination, violence, wars, crusades, holocausts,
All
inquisition.
of it.
It all stems from that sense that only your way is the right way.
Well, yeah. So let me ask you this, because with your characters and you writing so much about, character psycho humans are, it's just a bundle of psychology, right? We're all about all these games and everything, no matter what. So in writing this, when you think about the political games that happen in a corporate setting, right? The secrets and all of that kind of stuff. In a way, if we took all that away, where would we be as humans? Because that is, even animals do that. Monkeys do it. You
Mhm.
know, animals play games too. Orcas, they're looking at, what orcas do is they play games. Their minds are brilliant. Um, but if we took away, isn't that kind of bringing the balance in? It's like, so that you don't have exactly what you're talking about. My way is the only way, an authoritarian kind of rule of the world, which has always been the biggest problem in everything, is that dominance, right? In world history. So don't you think, in a way, as much as the politics and all the drama, if we took the drama out, it could lead straight to the side we don't want? So maybe we do need it. We need the high school playground.
I not only think we need it, I think it's just indelibly embedded in who we are and what we are as as living creatures. It always comes down, doesn't it, to duality, uh,
Mm,
God and devil, good and evil, honesty and dishonesty. We dwell in duality,
mm,
and finding that kind of balance between what's moral and ethical and what's necessary for survival is always going to be part of who we are as creatures who are struggling to live and thrive and
mhm,
prosper.
mm. Yeah. Wow. So when you write and you're so character driven, you're saying they're like family. I mean, how do you switch them off if you go out to dinner with your family, and are they sitting there going, "No, eat this. No, eat that." Do you have them sitting there? Do you have to tell them to, like, okay, back off now. I'll talk to you in the morning? Do you, like, write at a certain time where they pop out? I mean, how is that balance?
That's a very good question. When I'm writing, they are so real and they're right there. And when I'm not writing, they certainly pop up from time to time and may have something to remind me about or have me or prompt me to think about. But I think I'm pretty good at turning that off and focusing on the real people that I'm associating with, my wife or friends, or uh, it's uh, I that ability to compartmentalize is I think something I've just always naturally been pretty comfortable with.
Mm. To me, I think it'd be fun though, because it's like you've got this character and you go out to dinner somewhere and then you can see another person, like people watching, right? Because people watching is it's pure joy. You know, people watching is just interesting because you don't really know the real story, but you can create it. And
Mhm.
so like it's kind of like if you take your characters out to dinner and they see someone and they go, oh no, that one's attracted to that one. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. That certainly happens. And sometimes I'll come across someone and I'll say, if that person were an actor or an actress, they could play this character
exactly.
in a film and just be perfect.
Well, actually, and that brings, talking about film or anything on the screen, right? Your characters get you so fast and it's a fast paced. You wouldn't think that, right? Because there's a lot to digest, but it's fast moving in reading your book. And so like when something's fast moving like that, I feel like it's set up really well to be, like a Netflix series or something like that or a movie. Do you think that for when you write it? Would you let that happen?
Oh, well, thank you. That's very flattering. Thank you. That would be lovely. I would love to see what somebody would do in adapting something I wrote to a different medium. Uh,
Mm,
film is a completely different medium from literature. It's visual, whereas literature is actually more. It's almost like listening to yourself tell a story.
hmm.
It's more audio. Uh, but
It's co-creative too, because you're seeing the characters as you dress them, right? It's kind of co-creative to me, reading a book.
oh yes, and uh, you know what you were saying about the book moving. There's something. This may be just a pet peeve or a pet preference on my part, but there's something in writing that I call connective tissue,
Mm,
which is what many authors do to get you from point A to point B, or to tell you in great detail over pages and pages what the furnishings in a room look like. And this is this is perhaps embarrassing, but when I'm reading a novel and I get to those parts, I start skimming.
yeah,
God,
me too.
because I want to get to the next real thing.
You just want to tell the author, get on with it.
Right. And when I was in college, I one of the classes I took as a writing major was interesting. They would give us stuff to read and then ask you to write something in the style of that author.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I discovered an author named Jerzy Kosinski. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Most people
Mm-hmm.
haven't. He's become he's become a completely obscure author, even though a novel he wrote called Steps won the National Book Award back in the
Oh,
1960s. So, but I and it was we were given Steps, that very novel that had won the National Book Award, to read and to write something in his style, and I became a big fan of Jerzy Kosinski. Sadly, he eventually committed suicide, and
oh,
I never got to see the kind of work he would write as an older man,
yeah.
which would have been imbued with so much wisdom. I always regret that, and why he was driven to that. But uh, he wrote. He was the only author I've ever read who wrote with pretty much zero connective tissue, just none. He would just leave it out and go to the next thing and expect the reader to fill in the blanks. And that's had a great influence on me. I
Yeah.
don't think I'm quite as spare or sparse as Jerzy Kosinski was with connective tissue, but I'm pretty sparse. So I'm when I'm finished with A, I go right to B, and I don't spend a whole lot of time telling the reader how we got from A to B because I think the readers are intelligent enough to figure out how we got
Yeah, I was
to B.
talking with an author about this, Leon Skater, and his Memory of Fictions book, and he's very good at characters as well, and very fast moving. You're both very different, but it was that same, like, you don't want to, it's almost dumbing down your audience if you don't let them to have that co-creative experience. It's like trying to tell them how to read. It's like you're telling me I don't understand what a couch looks like. That's, you know,
Yes. And aside, that's a very good point. It's somewhat insulting to the reader, but also by not doing it, you're enabling each reader to kind of create the living room furnishings that they picture or
mhm,
create the exact modus operandi from getting from the store you're shopping in back to your home. Um,
right.
and everybody will imagine it a little bit differently and in a way that is more meaningful and emphatic to them. So,
Yeah,
so you're improving the story in their own eyes because they're kind of writing part of it as they go, and it's more meaningful to them.
I love that because I think we need that creative part with now the way everything's so digital and fast moving, and we can't be spoon fed. We have to keep our creativity going. I don't care what we do in life. If we do not use our creative muscle, we're going to suck. That's it. Period. You know, creativity is everything. It's in whatever you do in business, in a career, I don't care what it is. If you don't use a creative muscle, how are you going to grow? And creativity allows us to make mistakes and go, oh, well, I was just trying something. We're allowed to mess up dinner, but hey, I learned something new and I'll have a new dish the next day. Creativity is everything. It's how we get out of situations.
And it's kind of sad to me, and I imagine it's sad to you too, Lisa, that there seems to be from some circles anyway, kind of a war going on now on creativity and
Yep.
learning, but especially the humanities are,
In
college
danger. Hmm.
universities are under siege to cut humanities. Some people say you need to do this because we need more scientists and engineers, but I think there are many people who are opposed to the humanities because it encourages you to really think outside the box, to question authority, to question things that are just taken for granted, and to think creatively and with originality. And that's where art and music and literature and film,
Even medicine, science,
yeah.
medicine, work, and creativity. It's in even having, I even talk about critical thinking going away. The art of conversations are almost, I think in a way podcasting kind of brought back the importance of conversation. They always said, oh, you're not supposed to do these kinds of conversation on radio. You've got 3 minutes, get in, get out. And, it's like people would say, oh, I need a bullet list of everything you're going to ask me on a podcast. I'm like, no, it just doesn't work that way. This is a conversation. Let it go where it wants. Stop micromanaging a conversation. You know what I mean? It's very
Yeah.
interesting to me how all of this has changed, but that's why I love doing these, second Wednesday shows with Books Forward, who you work with, and they stand up for the arts, and they
They-
stand up,
they-
and they only represent really good people, really good authors, and they stand up for the right things, and humanity, the humanities and the arts, they tell the truth.
Absolutely. And
Period. you
It's
know?
it, it's a particular pleasure doing this with you, Lisa, because as precisely as you said, this is a conversation. You're not asking questions that were
Yeah,
unachieved.
let me give you, should I do the press release questions? I can't do it. I refuse because because the conversations are so important, and I think books bring that out. The arts. Hey, did you hear this song? Well, I really it means this to me. I This is what I think it's about. And a musician will write a song, and you'll think it's this, and it means something completely different, and that's okay. It's like you
Yes.
you may have a couch in a living room setting and say it's green, and someone's going to go, it's this, and it doesn't matter to you, does it? Unless it's part of the scene, if it's a key thing in the setting, or part of the storyline. But I love that part of books, that co-creative journey, because I do that. We have a transformational coach on our show every month, and I was talking to her today, and I said, people think I'm weird because I go to sleep, I create my own dreams. It's like a meditation practice, and I sleep and I dream scenes. And I always go, where are we going to go? Okay, we're going to start out here and let's see what happens, because it's interesting to me. And they think you're nuts if you dream a lot, but I think it's a wonderful thing. It's co creative. Now, sometimes it will come off of a book I'm reading. I go, well, let's take this journey here and see what happens. But isn't that wonderful that we have that as humans? These these creative things in us. That I love it.
Yes, and that's why I'm so drawn to the medium of literature, long form novels, because
Hmm.
you can explore the psychological, you can explore what people are thinking and saying and their motivations for doing things, and you can leave the color of the couch to the reader if you choose to. And
The
I
couch. What goes with psychology, doesn't it?
yeah, but contrast that with a filmmaker, and a couple of filmmakers actually wrote blurbs for Golda's Hutch. Blurbs are for anybody who doesn't know the term. They're those short endorsements that are
Hmm.
on the back cover or the flap or at the beginning of the book from other authors or artists about the book. So a couple of filmmakers gave me very nice blurbs or endorsements for Golda's Hutch. So, if you think about the constraints and the possibilities of each individual medium, in a film, you can't really explore the inner thinking so much unless you just have, constant interior dialogue going on, which I guess gets old
Hmm.
in a film, in most films. So, and because it's a visual medium, you would have to decide what color the couch is and what color the walls are, and so it becomes a very different
Yeah,
equation of telling a story
it's
with
reverse.
yes, you're telling a story sort of in reverse of literature, and yet novels get adapted all the time, and but they're different. They're completely different works of art.
Hmm. And you have music that sets the tone as well,
Hmm.
which is another
Yes.
thing. Well, I think now stage play, that's a whole other thing too, because that's live in a theater. It's not as polished, right? It's polished, but it's not as in a movie they can change things and they do all this digital stuff and all that. But a stage play, you're right there having to do it, and the art of improv comes
Yes.
in, which
What
to me is the balance between it all.
when I was in high school, I wondered if I wanted to write stage plays or novels, and I tried writing a few plays. And a couple of them, we actually got to produced in, with the student theater and such. And it's very interesting because it's almost as if I felt like I was writing a schematic or the basic architecture of a work, but then it got taken and it was fleshed out by other people, by a director and by actors.
Mhm.
And when you're writing a novel and that's multiplied in a film because hundreds of people work on a film. But when you're writing a novel, it's just you and your keyboard alone in a room, and it's your work completely. So that's another unique aspect about literature versus visual arts or music, which are more collaborative, uh,
Yeah.
forming arts.
It's
And
like being a painter. Yeah, it's like being a painter. Now,
Mhm.
you put the song Istanbul, not Constantinople, Istanbul in
Oh,
speaking of music. Now, I've had this running thing about who did it what putting on the Ritz because I get those two songs always put together. Like, don't you think that someone could do a medley with Istanbul, not Constantinople and put it on the Ritz? I don't
very,
know. I've
very
always thought they were
interesting.
the same song. For some reason, I'll start singing one part and go into putting on the Ritz. It's
No,
weird.
that is very weird because they come from such different eras. Putting on the
Yeah,
Ritz, an Irving Berlin song when that ragtime kind of thing was
yeah.
coming into vogue,
Mhm.
and Irving Berlin and George Gershwin and other of those composers from like the 1930s, I guess it was, were writing those kind of things, and uh, not not Constantinople was
It's later.
much newer song,
Yeah.
and more of a novelty kind of song. But you're right, the beat and the hooks really
It,
could go together. The,
I
the
always, yeah,
the the
I
reason
go
I
nuts with it.
chose that song for Byron Dorn, uh, A, because it's kind of a throwback, and he's a bit of a throwback, but also in a way that that song is politically incorrect, right? It's saying we had a perfectly fine name with Constantinople. Why did we have to change it to Istanbul?
Yep.
And Byron Dorn is exactly the kind of person who would sit around and grouse about something like that. So that song, I thought just subtly, him getting into that song and singing along with it gave you a little bit of a clue to the kind of grousing, uh, kind of politically
Brash.
incorrect, yeah, person he is, someone who kind of likes the way things used to be and doesn't necessarily embrace a new way of thinking about things. So,
You know what? I had a boss once when I was in the music industry, and he was the the VP, yeah, VP, and his last name was Dorn.
oh, really?
And the character, like I just went, oh my God, did you know him? Like, really? Like, this, I was like, no way. So I can't wait for Nancy, my mom, because she knows the same guy very well too. I can't wait for her to read your book because she's gonna. I within I know that in 5 minutes. Normally she steals the books and she gets them first, but within 5 minutes she's gonna go, oh my God, it's him. I know it. I know it. We're gonna have a bet because it's the same. Oh my God, gluttonous character. I just gonna say that, but it's a what I can't wait to finish it, and I'll probably do it overnight because it's such a good book.
Well, thank
But,
you.
but I love it. I love it, and that's the thing. Some things are fast moving. It's fast moving, but and some novels just take time depending on what it is. Everything's different. And I love that you show that about, looking at things differently, that duality that you're talking about. That is the human form. But thank you so much for a fun conversation. I'm going to, that's, yeah, the human species is really interesting.
It was a great pleasure, Lisa, talking to you. You're terrific at this, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, too. Everyone, the website is in the episode notes. Everyone, go to robertstevengoldstein.com. The book is out now, came out March 11th, 2025. And trust me, you're going to enjoy reading it. So check it out. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.